Uhuru na Nguvu.
No. You looking at a free black man.
Talk Black 360.
You want to know what a free black man look like? Look at me.
Uhuru na Nguvu. Welcome to another dose of Talk Black 360. I am your host, Tino Blaine King, the Kure and Kush, the pioneer of black pragmatism. So those of you who don't know actually why I do this podcast or what is the mission of the podcast, you would probably wrongfully assume that this is a message of hate. I want to be clear in today's podcast that black interests, which I represent, are not consistent with white hate. So in today's topic, we will be discussing just that. We'll be discussing briefly white folks and black interests, how they're different and how they don't necessarily conflict when we're talking about black liberation. We have to be concerned about black interests. And that is something that I continue to promote. I will continue to promote. I never have and never will promote a platform of hate. But, you know, as usual, I always like to refer to our ancestors who have spoke to these issues. And I'll be doing nothing any different today. So let's take a quick look at what some of the ancestors had to say about this issue. Take a look.
Do you hate all white people?
I don't think it's a fair question. The white man doesn't even come into my attitude. Mr. Muhammad teaches us to love our own kind and let the white man take care of himself. For a white man today, sir, after kidnapping millions of black people from Africa, stripping them of all human characteristics and relegating them to the role of chattel or cattle or animals, commodity, merchandise that could be bought and sold at will, and then 100 years since the Emancipation Proclamation, using every type of deceptive method to further us into slavery, called second-class citizenship, I think that it would take a whole lot of nerve for white people today to ask Negroes, do they hate them?
Okay, very interesting perspective that Brother Malcolm put forward, and I think it is very direct and self-explanatory. When we're discussing black interests, has absolutely nothing to do with the behavior of white folks. And at the same time, we must also understand that this is not a conversation that we are having with white folks. This is a conversation within our community. But unfortunately, since we don't have the access to a private media or forum where we can discuss our in-house matters, our issues are forced to be discussed in a public forum. This is one of the reasons why I'm an advocate of creating black embassies, because these black embassies will give us the opportunity to have our in-house private discussions amongst ourselves, as all other people do. And when they decide what is in the best interests of their community, as we must decide what is in the best interest of our community, then it is brought out to the public forum. But let me continue to move forward, because there's another clip by Brother Malcolm I want you to take a look at.
I don't advocate any kind of hate.
But there's a lot of talk that sounds very much like it.
No, I think that the guilt complex of the American white man is so profound until when you begin to analyze the real condition of the black man in America, instead of the American white man eliminating the causes that create that condition, he tries to cover it up by accusing his accusers of teaching hate. But actually, they're just exposing him for being responsible for what exists.
Now, what was interesting about that clip is a concept that I think we have to pay very close attention to. And again, I'm not speaking to this from a white perspective. I'm speaking to this from an in-house discussion. So what Brother Malcolm expressed in that clip was that in us doing the very act of bringing up our own interests, we are met with a combative expression from white folks who tend to believe that this is out of place. And in order for us to be able to continue that conversation, we have to contend with white folks saying that that is actually an uncivil behavior, and then they attempt to compare that behavior to white hate and the things that we have suffered for all of the years that we have suffered under the system of oppression that we live under. Now, the importance of that is, very specifically in that clip, Malcolm is talking about how white folks behave to defend the past behaviors of this country, what he's considering to be called white guilt. What I want to express to this, since we are talking or having a family discussion, an in-house scenario, is that many of the black people who currently speak on our issues will do the same thing that Malcolm has just specified that white folks do in this thing of white guilt. Well, I want to talk about the reality that black people are starting to take on the burden of white guilt. And in many cases, when black people speak to the interests of other black people or of black people as a whole, you'll find that the first ones to come out against that conversation would be black people. So in this scenario, what I'm saying is they have taken on the burden of white guilt and now becoming a contradictory force to black people speaking about black interests. This is a very dangerous behavior, and I think in-house we need to address this and begin to correct it in a very civil manner, because we don't want to bring it, as it has already proven to have escalated to civil discourse that is a negative. We need to bring it to a civil discourse that becomes positive, that produces a result that helps us to come together with the conversation rather than separate ourselves with the conversation. The reality is this: black interests are divided amongst white organizations and white social structures. So a lot of times when we are speaking about black interests, but we connect ourselves to these white organizations and white structures, we'll find ourselves at odds with one another because sometimes just interests in general conflict amongst black people. So we tend to not want to discount the value of whatever that white structure is. So we minimize the value of what the black interest is. So I think that's a very important thing to consider when we're having this in-house discourse. The last clip I want you to take a look at was a statement that the brother Muhammad Ali had made some time ago. I think it was in '71 when he made this statement, and it puts a lot of things in this discussion into proper perspective. Take a look.
There are many white people who mean right and in heart want to do right, but there are so few. If 10,000 rattlesnakes was coming down that aisle now, and I had a door here I could shut, and in that 10,000, 1,000 meant right. 1,000 rattlesnakes didn't want to bite me. I knew they were good. Should I let all these rattlesnakes come down, hoping that 1,000 get together and form a Sheol? Or should I just close the door and stay safe? So now I'm going to forget the 400 years of lynching and killing and raping and depriving my people of freedom, justice, equality, first fired, last hired, the lowest of low, last respected, and I'm going to look at 2 or 3 white people who are trying to do right and don't see the other million trying to kill me? I'm not that big of a fool.
Okay, so as Brother Ali said, it is a very, very simple concept. There are good white people out there. There are white people who, who are not trying to destroy black people or even black interests. But it is not incumbent upon black people to extend the olive branch in that manner, especially anytime that it diminishes our ultimate mission, which is to forward our interests. So here's where we have to be able to draw the line between white folks and black interests. We are simply stating and representing, and I am definitely stating and representing in this podcast, that what must be done is we must speak specifically to our own interests. We are responsible for solving our own problems. And I don't think that any white organization or structure that is in society today should ever come before we speak about black interests, because we can't forget about the 400 years of oppression. We can't forget about all of the white supremacy that is not only built into white races, but is systematically built into the structure of this country. So those are things that I think we must always consider when this conversation comes up about black interest. So that is the message that I wanted to get out to you today. I hope that it was short enough that you will consume it, internalize it, process it, and promote it. This has been another episode or another dose of Talk Black 360. Until the next dose of Talk Black 360, you know what you must do. Stay strong and stay black. Ashe?
This has been another dose of Talk Black 360.
No, no, no. You will never be enslaved again by no man.